The Nimitz carried a somber crew as she pulled into port. The bodies of 13 of her crewmen had been flown off the carrier hours before. One body is still missing. On deck, Atlantic Fleet officials had their first chance to survey the damage. 20 planes damaged or destroyed, 3 so badly they were pushed overboard on the way back to Norfolk. The only real damage to the Nimitz was a dent in the flight deck from the impact of an explosion. Commanding Officer Captain Jack Batzler says the damage could have been worse.
Our systems worked well. They had great leadership on the flight deck, and I feel because of that, we have, under the circumstances, incurred minimum damage.
That I'm extremely proud to be associated with the caliber of sailor that we have in this ship, in this air wing. When you saw those young men up on that flight deck fighting a fire to save their ship, to save their aircraft, and to save their shipmates.
18-year-old Jeff Kimbrell from New Albany, Indiana, fought for his shipmates but lost a friend. He was on the deck when the radar jamming jet crashed.
About that time, we heard a big crack and they yelled fire on the flight deck, and then a bunch of us come running up. We all got our uniforms on, you know, and everything. We took off and we approached the fire and everything, fire hoses and stuff. We got it out pretty quick, and all. Still yet there's a lot of people that's hurt. You know.
Now the Navy turns its attention to finding out why the EA-6B Prowler crashed onto the flight deck. The landing signal officer reportedly let the pilot know he was not in good position for a landing and should fly off and try again. But the pilot didn't do that. Shipboard videotapes of each takeoff and landing will play a major role in the investigation. Admiral George Kinnear, a veteran aircraft carrier pilot, has seen those videotapes.
It appears that very late in his approach to the ship, he began a drift from left to right that caused him to touch down to the right of center line. Pilot error would be an obvious thing to jump to, but we cannot be certain that there may not have been other factors that were involved in this.
The Navy won't be finished with its investigation for at least 6 months. The most immediate task at hand is getting the Nimitz back in ship shape. The repair work will be done here at Pier 12 at the Norfolk Naval Base, and the bill will be high. Some estimates put the total damage at $100 million. Navy officials are not certain at this point how many of these aircraft will be able to be salvaged, but they hope to have the Nimitz back in the water by midday Saturday. Kathy Midkiff, Area 10 Eyewitness News, on board the Nimitz.
This is Penny Williams.
Right there, Mommy.
Thousands of people, like young Andrea Kalura, waited for hours, then waved when they saw their husband or dad lying along the decks of the Nimitz. For those whose loved ones were not hurt in the accident, this was a happy time.
I feel wonderful, absolutely wonderful, knowing he's alive and he's all right and nothing's wrong with him. I feel wonderful. See that handsome fella right up there waving his hands? Yeah. That's my baby.
When the men finally came off the Nimitz, the waiting was over.
You miss me?
Huh? You did.
Others were glad and relieved that their family members were not one of the injured or dead.
I'm so happy myself, and I feel sorry for them.
Those who were hurt would not or could not tell us anything about their injuries or the accident aboard ship. Were you one of the injured?
I'm sorry, I don't have any comments to make.
I don't know if I'm allowed to, you know, no. There's an ambulance waiting for me. I'd like to talk to you, but...
Those who were injured were driven off to Portsmouth Naval Hospital before ship officials would give us their names or what condition they were in.
Who's?
An eyewitness to the plane crash, Manuel Gomez, was too upset to give us details of what had happened.
First, the EA-6B came on in for an approach. It bolted one time on the deck, and it was a hell of a mess up there, so that's all I can really say right now.
When you say a hell of a mess, what did you see? You see flames, people running?
Flames, ordnance explosions. Like I said, a lot of my friends died that night. I just don't really want to talk about it.
Naval area phone booths were jammed as crewmen tried to get word to those who couldn't come that they were all right.
So it'll be a lot of rest and relaxation for the thousands of crew members aboard the Nimitz until Saturday, when the Nimitz takes off again for the Virgin Islands. Penny Williams, Area 10 Eyewitness News, Norfolk.
3 of the 14 men who were killed in that accident late Tuesday night were Marines, the crewmen of the Prowler jet that crashed. They were based here at Cherry Point. Their bodies will be returned here. The work of the 2nd Marine Air Wing goes on, as it must. 3 families in nearby Havelock were already notified, and everyone on the base had heard about what happened on the Nimitz. Pilot Bob Wrighton.
We feel the loss of our friends very deeply. However, the squadron business still has to go forward.
In the ready room, where flyers are briefed before missions, all was quiet. There were reminders of the departed buddies, a name on a mailbox, another listed on a roster from a recent deployment. 3 photos were already removed from the squadron showcase. The group commander had flown with 2 of the dead crewmen. Of the tragedy, he said,
"The loss is of a personal, like you would lose any loved one. It has an effect on a squadron. It has effect across the entire group, in fact, the entire wing."
The flight schedule of the 2nd Marine Air Wing continues. The Playboy Squadron must prepare a plane and crew to replace the jet that crashed and the crew that died. Howard Jaffe, Area 10 Eyewitness News, Cherry Point, North Carolina.
Aircraft experts are checking the delicate inner workings of 6 Navy planes. They're making a list of which planes will fly again and which will not. Officials will recommend that 2 of the A-7s be scrapped. An F-14 may soon join that list. The rest can probably be repaired. The problem will be getting the parts. Technicians will need not only wires and cables, they'll need major body parts as well, most of which have been committed to new planes under construction.
Some of the parts will take a long time to obtain them if they are the types of parts that were not originally procured because they are not parts that would normally be expected to be used.
How long are we talking
The
about?
lead time on those parts, depending on what you're talking about, could be anywhere from 18 months to 3 years, depending on the parts that may be required.
The most severely damaged aircraft will be repaired at Naval Air Rework facilities here in Norfolk and in Jacksonville. The less severely damaged will be repaired aboard the Nimitz, and those repairs are expected to be finished by the time the Nimitz departs tomorrow on the midday tide. Kathy Midkiff, Area 10 Eyewitness News at the Naval Air Rework facility.
With the Tuesday night accident now a memory, today America's mightiest warship was ready to head back to sea. The minor damages to a catapult and a small dented section on the flight deck were repaired, and the only wait now was for the midday tide. Though the Nimitz technically was ready to go, one could only wonder what was going through the minds of these sailors as they stared at the light crowd of onlookers. Family and friends said their official goodbyes earlier, so all that remained now was the formality of the gigantic warship leaving. Wives of Nimitz sailors, such as Ruth Hyde, were a little nervous about the departure in view of the events of 4 days ago.
I'm just tense right now, I always am before he leaves. Well, you just don't like being by yourself and having them away from home. Everything usually tears up when they are gone.
Well, after driving here from Florida and seeing the ship, I feel much better. I now know where he works, and I've seen the ship, and I'm really glad I got to see the ship and find out a little bit about the, what they do on the ship.
The Nimitz left with less than its full complement of jets. In all, 20 were damaged or destroyed in the accident Tuesday night. Replacements will fly out to the vessel later in its mission.
The Nimitz now heads back to just off the South Florida coast to complete its training exercise, and the hope is that the rest of this trip will be safe. Don Roberts, Area 10 Eyewitness News, Norfolk.